And now to the third of the major lexical categories, the category verb. Verbs, as everybody knows, are doing words, and breathing is certainly doing something, so breathe is a verb. But what about breath? Well, it certainly has to do with doing as well, but it's kind of thingy while breathing is kind of doey. Let's see if we can find a better way of telling the difference, and again let's turn to a morphosyntactic category. In this case the morphosyntactic category is tense. Tense in English has a regular form, and there are two tenses in English. There's the present tense, where there's nothing tacked on the end, and then there's the past tense, where usually there is something tacked on the end. So we have present tense breathe, and in the past breathed. So ed is a past tense inflection. Same with sigh. Sighed, that's the regular way things go. But the good news is that there are no exceptions. All verbs inflect for tense. Unlike nouns and number and adjectives in comparison, verbs are consistent. Everything that inflects for tense is a verb, no exceptions. On top of that, however, there are other grammatical word forms that verbs take as well. Verbs are the most heavily inflected category in English. These 5 verb forms are the one with nothing on the end, which we've already seen. There's a form that takes s on the end. In the regular form there's one that takes ed on the end, that's the past tense. There's one that normally takes ing, and there's another one that we can call the en inflected form. Well, regularly we get call with nothing on the end, calls, called, calling, and unfortunately the regular case, the en form, is actually the ed form again, but quite often we also get this one. Eat, eats, ate, whoops, there's a strong past tense form, no ending, and then eating, and finally eaten. He has eaten. He has called, right, is the called form of he has eaten. Well, if we make up a brand new verb, bling for example, then the regular form would be the one that we would use. I bling, she blings, she blinged, she was blinging, and she has blinged. That's how those pan out. And we wouldn't use the irregular forms because those only occur on specific verbs. The irregularity gets worse in the case of put. No inflection comes on the first one, as you'd expect, but there's also no inflection on the past tense form, and there's no inflection on the supposedly en form. Bring has brought in the past and also brought at the end. These are old irregular forms, and as in every other case, if you were learning the language as an adult, you'd have to learn these off as exceptions, and they would be somewhere in the back of the book, and you just have to chant them to yourself. Meet, meets, met, meeting, met. For those of you who have done French, you know about this. Principal parts, the same with German, lots of irregular cases, and you might wonder why languages are like that. Well, languages are not made by computers. Languages evolve in their own mysterious way, and these irregular forms are forms from the past that have survived through to the present, and they're not regular. We'll finish off with another little poem of Mr. Blake and try and see if we can pick the verbs. Notice here the only test we need, absolutely infallible, is does whatever it is take a past tense? Does voice take a past tense? No. But are takes a past tense. It's were. When the voices of children were heard on the green, that's a past tense. But hear takes a past tense as well. Here, they hear now and they heard then. It takes a past tense, so there's 2 verbs in there. And there's are again, so we know that's a verb. But what about whisperings? Whispering is certainly a verb. What about whisperings? Well, it's got a plural on the end of it, hasn't it? One whispering, two whisperings. It's a noun. So the inflection ending is really quite a good test. Rise, rose. Yes, rise is a verb. Turn, turned. There's a verb. Come, past tense. Came, is, past tense. Was, go, past tense. Whoops, went. Weird. Go has a past tense and it's went. Again, something you have to learn. Arise, past tense. Arose. Are, we've done. Wasted, waste something, wasted something. That's the past tense. And the last line has no verb at all. Well, there are some little patterns here, and some of the patterns have to do with whether you've got two verbs in a row or one verb by itself. We have patterns of hear, heard, strong verb. Are, were, well, that's obviously a strong verb because you can't predict that. And rise, rose, another strong verb. Turn, turned. Whoopee, finally a regular one. Come, came. Gone, went. The vast majority of these verbs are very unpredictable. That's because they're very simple, very old verbs. They've been in the English language a long time. And it's another clever little poem from Mr. William Blake, who's vaguely disturbing. If you read that poem 2 or 3 times to yourself, you don't feel very comfortable.